This peace chant is on page 142-143 of Universal Prayers. Page 142, 143 and 144 also, next page also. Three stanzas are there. These are taken from the Chandi, Devi Mahatmya. These are very important verses. Swami, when Sri Ramakrishna worshipped Holy Mother as Shodashi, as the Divine Mother, he chanted these three verses. So we are going to chant them. Om Sarvamangalamangallye Shive Sarvarthasadhike Sharanye Triambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Srishti Sthiti Vinashanam Shakti Bhute Sanatani Gunashraye Gunamaye Narayani Namostute Sharanagata Dinartha Paritrana Parayane Sarvasyartya Hare Devi Narayani Namostute Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. English translation, page 143, the third and fourth paragraphs. O auspicious Divine Mother, you are the source of all auspiciousness. You are the accomplisher of all cherished desires. You are the giver of knowledge. You possess the eye of wisdom and beautiful form. O thou power divine, salutations to thee. O eternal one, you are the energy of creation, maintenance and destruction. You are the abode of the threefold cosmic energy, and you are also its manifester. O thou power divine, salutations to thee. O Mother, you are the savior of the distressed and of the careworn, who take refuge in thee. Thou art the remover of the misery of all. O thou power divine, salutations to thee. Om peace. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings. And may there be peace everywhere in nature. The last time we were just started the verse 47. In this part of the Bhagavad Gita, until verse number 54, until verse number 53, the important topic discussed is the essence of Karma Yoga. How Karma Yoga, karma if performed with the proper attitude, can lead us to self-knowledge, Atma Jnana. It can lead us to devotion, bhakti, or it can lead us to self-knowledge. Otherwise, if you do karma in the ordinary way with a selfish motive, it will bind us deeper in the realm of ignorance, and we will continue our birth and cycle, the cycle of birth and death, and a lot of suffering in between. If we want to achieve liberation from the cycle of birth and death and reach God, then we have to do the karma, all that we do, with the proper attitude. What is the proper attitude is being described in this part of the Bhagavad Gita, from 47 until 53. 54 onwards, the topic changes. That will be the most interesting part. Sita Prajna Lakshanam, the qualities of a person of sage of steady wisdom. That we'll do later. So let us do 47. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhu ma te sangosta karmani. In this verse, one of the most important verses, this and the next one, 47, 48, key verses. In this verse 47, Bhagavan Sri Krishna has mentioned four things, 4 points. First point is Karmani evate adhikaraha. Adhikara means power, authority, jurisdiction. We have some control, some freedom from power in regard to our work that we do. Karmani eva. Karmani means in karma. Eva, alone. Only in karma that we do, we have little bit of freedom, not total freedom. Here also, little bit of freedom we have. For example, when we are doing cooking, we can decide whether to do which vegetable to use, whether to make rice or chapati or both. Those kinds of decisions we can make. Small decisions we can make. But not, there also a complete freedom is not there. Up to a limited extent, we have some freedom in how to do the work, what methodology to use, what material to use, and when to do the work. Those things we can decide to some extent. Karmani evate adhikara. Your jurisdiction was limited only to the field of karma. Where you don't have power, jurisdiction is in the karma phala. Second point. Ma phaleshu kadachana. Kadachana means ever. Ma means no, not ever. Phaleshu, in the fruit of work. This is something that is very difficult for majority of people to understand. Sri Krishna says you have some freedom in regard to the work you do, but you have no control over the outcome of your work. That is the difficult point to understand. If I am doing the work, why should I not control the result of my work? That question comes. I'm the doer, so I must be able to predict and control what should be the result of my work. Sri Krishna says, no, you have no control over the result of your work. To accept that, there's going to be a little bit of struggle. For some, it is easy. They know from experience. Life teaches us all these lessons directly without going through the book. When we do some work, we know that the result is not in our hands always. That we have learned from experience. For those people who don't have that life experience, it's hard to understand. They will question, why should I not control the outcome, result of my work? Then the answer will come later in the Gita. I'll explain that in a little bit. Why we have no control over the result of work, I will explain in some detail with some examples. Third point, ma karma phala hetur bhu. Ma bhu means don't become or don't be. Karma phala hetu. Don't assume that you are the producer of the result of your work. Karma means action. Phala means fruit of action, result of action. Hetu means the cause. You don't have the power to produce the result of your work. That's hard to accept, but that is the plain truth. If you don't accept it by reading Gita, life will force you to accept it through the experience. Many examples will clarify that one. Ma karma pale hetur bhuhu. Don't be impelled by the fruits of work. Don't be driven by the fruits of work. Driven means what you do the best you can. These are the instructions of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. When you do some work, you do the best work you can produce. Highest quality work you can produce, you produce, put in. Then whatever result comes, you accept it calmly. Now the fourth point is our question. Supposing you tell somebody that you have to work very hard, but you can't control the outcome. Then they'll say, why should I bother to work if I cannot produce if I cannot control the result of my work? Then why should I bother? For example, a student will say, I study very hard, but whether I will get A or not, I don't know. I can't control what grade I get. And then why should I study hard? Why should I bother to take all the trouble to work very hard if I can't control the outcome? Sri Krishna says, don't do that. Te sangaha akarmani ma astu, instruction. Akarma means inaction, lack of action. Do not resort to inaction. You should not say, if I can't control the result of my work, why should I bother to work? For two reasons we have to work. One reason is, as we already saw before, it will come again, work is imperative. Imperative means something that we cannot escape. As hard as you may try, you cannot remain still without performing any action, even for a short period of time. Try that one. Supposing somebody says, today I'm not going to work at all. And I'm going to stay in my bed all day. I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to do any work. Supposing somebody says like that, and he doesn't get up, how long can he stay in the bed? Nature will make him get up and do some action. Hunger will come, you have to take bath, and you have to change your dress, you have to go to the kitchen, you have to make tea or coffee or breakfast. You can't stop doing it. How long can you stop doing action? You can't stop. It's physically, psychologically, action is imperative. Action is a psychological and physical imperative. Nobody can escape performing action for any period of time. Even if you don't do physically get up, you are thinking, I'm not going to get up. That is action. Action can happen in the mind, action can happen through speech, action can happen through body. These are the three instruments of action. We think, we speak, and we do physical work with our hands and sense organs. These three actions are inevitable. Even if you physically don't want to get up or cannot get up, and when your mind will be thinking, I'm not going to get up, I'm not going to do any work. So action is inevitable. So Sri Krishna says, don't remain inactive simply because you can't control the outcome of your work. Outcome will come. If you do good work, 99.9% of the time, good result will come. But sometimes the result will not come. Some other unexpected result will come. Why that unexpected result will come, not as we expect, there are reasons for that one. He will give the reasons later in the 18th chapter. I'll explain the reasons why we have no control over the outcome of the work. Now that is 47. You have some control over the work you do, but you have no control over the result of your work. And then perform all your work to the best of your ability. Don't remain inactive. You can't remain inactive. You don't remain inactive simply because you are not in charge of the result of your work. That is the gist of the sloka. Now, our explanation, I'll try to understand, if I am doing the work, why cannot control the outcome? I should be able to control whether I succeed or fail, to what extent I succeed or fail. That's to be in my hands because I am the one who is doing the work. That's our question. The answer is very simple. The result of our work, we are the doers. The result of our work depends upon not only what I do, but upon many other factors over which I have no control. For example, weather. You can't control the weather. Weather affects our work in some cases, not in all the cases, because our office work is in air-conditioned, humidity controlled modern building. Then whether there is snowing outside or hot outside, it does not matter to you. But for certain kinds of work, weather is an important factor. Weather affects how much control do we have over the weather. I give an example. Supposing there is a farmer and he has a farm, and he works very hard to prepare the field, kshetra, and plows the field and puts the fertilizers on the seeds at the proper time, and then he hopes the rain will come. Adequate amount of rain must come at the proper time. Then the crop will grow and you will get a good harvest. Now, the farmer has worked very hard. to do his part of the work. Supposing some years the rain will come at the right time, right quantity of rain, the right time, then crop will be successful, you'll get a bumper crop. 1 year, there is no rain, drought, or there is too much rain, or rain will come too late or too early. Too much rain will come, wash away all the. Then what happens? The farmers' all work will go to waste. No crop, no harvest. He worked very hard, but the result was he could not control the result. Farmer cannot control how much crop will come, when it will come, whether it will be successful harvest or not. It is not in his hands. Supposing he says, for argument's sake, since I cannot predict whether there will be rain or not, why should I bother to plow the land and sow the seeds? I'll simply keep quiet. Then what happens? If he does not do his work, then there is no guaranteeing failure. There is no crop at all. If you do the work, there is a good chance you will get the crop. If you don't do the work at all, there is a 100% chance you will not get any crop at all. So which will you prefer? Will you say, if you are a farmer, will you say, since I cannot control the weather, why should I bother to plow my field and put the seed and everything? I will not do anything. Okay, welcome. And you will only not have any food to eat for next year. If you do hard work, and there is a very, very high probability that you will get the good crop. Once in a while, weather may not be suitable. So that is one example. When one factor, namely weather, which we cannot control, affects the outcome of our work. And that's an example. Now, because the result is not in my control, I cannot say I will not do any work at all. Then you will be ensuring failure. Second example I will give. All of us are not farmers, so we are working in offices and homes and other places. I give an example of a student, senior engineering student, engineering major, and the last two semesters, they have to do a project, engineering design project they have to do. Usually 4 or 5 students work on a project. It's not solo. So 4 or 5 students will work, are assigned one team is assigned one project, one problem to solve, and they're working together. All of them are good students. That's why they are in the senior year of their college. Now, supposing out of 5 students, 4 of them work very hard. They put in their share of the work very diligently. They work very hard. And the 5th person goes off, either intentionally or he may become sick or may not be able to do his part. The group will assign who will do what, how much part and what part. So the 5th person becomes either sick, which he cannot control, or something else happens, he forgets to do his work, does not do his work. Then all the 4 other people will also suffer the consequences of this one person's failure. How can you make sure in a team of 5 people, 4 or 5 people, that everybody will put in the best effort? I can do my best effort, but if the other person in the work team does not do his part, then my work will suffer, everybody's work will suffer. Then I have no control over the outcome. Whole project will not be successful, they will get a C. Everybody the 4 other people who did very good work, very hard work, they also will get a C grade in spite of their best work. That means our work generally depends upon the work of the co-workers, quality of work and attitude of the co-workers. It's true in the office situation, it's true in a family situation. In a family, there are, for example, 2 children, 2 parents, and one child is misbehaving. The whole family will suffer. Other child also will suffer. Whatever one person does or does not do affects the other people in the team, in the family, in the workplace. And we have no control. Third example I'll give. It's an actual example which happened, I saw with my own eyes. And it happened to a family in a different state. I will not say where it happened because I want to protect their identity. Parents, father has a very good job, engineer. Mother also has a job. 3 children were born. First boy, actual example. Second boy, third daughter. Now, all of the three children were brought up in the same household with the same parents, with the same loving upbringing. They did their best to give the best education, healthcare, opportunities for the children to grow. Parents did not make any distinction. All children, three children were treated equally with equal love and attention. Best upbringing they gave, whatever they could. What happened? All the three children must be successful according to our expectation. No. First boy dropped out of high school, fell into bad company. Real example, fell into bad company and started taking drugs. For some time, the parents did not know because when he came home, he would come home late and his mood was not good. He was misbehaving. His grades went down rapidly. And the parents asked him, "What's the problem with you?" And he did not say. He went. Finally, they found out that this boy was taking drugs. Then what do? The parents, they went to the school counselor. The school counselor told them to send the boy to the rehab. The parents sent the boy to a rehab center for 4 6 weeks, whatever, very expensive. And he came back after the rehab. He was sober for a short time, then he again started taking drugs. Again, it happened 2 3 times. 2 3 times rehab. Then he finally left, dropped out of school. He stopped coming home at night. He would spend his nights anywhere, somewhere. Parents requested them, pleaded with them, cried, and he would not listen. All the parents could do, they did whatever they could. Other two children excellent, studied very well, got good grades, well-behaved children. Now, finally, what happened? One night at 2 o'clock in the morning, the father got a phone call from the police precincts. The police officer said, "Are you so and so?" "Yes, sir. Please come and identify your son." The boy had died of drug overdose. What do you do? Who can you blame the parents? Or how to explain this one? They did their very best. They did not make any distinction between one child and another child. Same upbringing, same living home, same environment, same care, same facilities, everything is same. But one by one this way, other two children went that. This is because what happened to the boy is the result of not only what the parents put into his life, but his own past karma also came into play. The boy's past karma was such that he became addicted to drugs. Parents did the very best they could. Still, the result was not satisfactory. So how do you explain this one? Other factors came into play, and the other factor being child's own past karma. Parents did their very best. They could not do anything better. The very thing they put into the upbringing of the children. But the result was not satisfactory because of the outside factor, which is namely the past karma of the boy, which he also cannot control. The boy also cannot control the past action which he did in the previous lifetimes. That's bearing fruit now. So failure came. So because the uncertainty, do the parents say, "Oh, you're not going to do our best because we can't know who is going to succeed, who is going to fail. We'll just do the minimum." Can they say like that? No, they have to do their best. They have to do their best, hoping things will happen. Most of the time, good result, good work will bring good outcome. But once in a while, some other factor beyond the control of the worker, namely the parents in this case, comes into play, and the result will be something totally different from what one usually expects to get. Like this, there is always some external factor which we cannot predict or control, which affects the outcome of our work. There's nothing we can do. Many examples can be given like that. In an office situation, you are an executive or some specialist, engineering specialist, and in a team. The team member participating in your project, designing some equipment or machine or something, you're doing that one. It requires the collaboration of many different people from different specialties. So the one team member may not be in your workplace. He may be in some other country. Somebody participating in my project is working from Japan or India or Bangladesh. When it is day here, it is night for them. When it is night here, they are working during their time. And the next morning, they send their whatever what they have to do to me, and I have to do my work in continuation of that. My input is somebody else's output. And how much control do you have over the quality of that person's output? He may be not be the properly qualified person. He may have minimum qualification. He may not be well, and he is working at the night because it is day here, and he's not doing his best. And his work affects my work, and I have no control over who the other person is. I don't even know. He's in some other country, and I cannot choose my co-worker. The company hires people. You have to work whoever is doing the work. We don't have control because our work depends upon the work of other people. One more example, two more examples I will give. Supposing you are going to this happened to me personally. I was going to catch a Lufthansa flight to go to India many years ago. And the Lufthansa flight departure time was 6 o'clock p.m. from Washington Dulles Airport. I was staying in Greenbelt at that time. The travel time is 45 minutes. Let us say 1 hour. So I want to be there 2 hours before the departure time for checking in, international flight. So 4 o'clock latest, I have to be at the airport. So if I start at 3 o'clock, we should be there by 4 o'clock. I started at 2 o'clock. You have 1 hour extra margin in case some traffic jam or something. So 1 hour extra I gave. And then I should be able to reach if I left the home at 2 o'clock, should be able to reach the airport at 3 o'clock, allowing 1 hour, only 40 minutes it takes. Now what happened was, most of the time it succeed. That day what happened was, there was a sudden change of weather, and there was some accident happened on the Capital Beltway. All the 3 lanes were closed. It turned out that probably some truck carrying hazardous material skidded because of this snow and capsized, and all the 3 lanes were closed. Hundreds of cars in front of me, hundreds of cars behind me, and I'm in the Beltway, nowhere near an exit. And I'm looking at the watch, I'm saying 6 o'clock, I have to board the plane, 4 o'clock, 4:30, I have to check in. I'm still in the Beltway. You know, what do you do? How much control do I have? How much more safety factor I should leave? 1 hour earlier than required, I started. So how can you control? It depends. My reaching the destination, I should be able to reach destination if I give enough time for travel. I gave. But still, whether I reach destination, my airport at the right time or not, it's not in my control. It depends upon the other drivers and the weather, none of which I can control. If some other driver is driving drunk and he causes an accident and I'm delayed to my work, I have to go to work at 8 o'clock or give a presentation to my client, and I leave home at 7 o'clock, but traffic jam and I can't. I'm looking at the clock, 8 o'clock came, all the clients are waiting in the office for my presentation, I'm still on the road. Situations like this happen. We do the best we can, but there is no 100% guarantee that I will get the result that I expect to get. Because the result of my work depends upon not only what I do, but upon what other people do, how the weather turns out. So many other factors are there. Those factors are listed in the 18th chapter. The conclusion is in the 47th verse. You have some control over the work. I can start at 3 o'clock or 2:45 or 1:45. That much control I have. I can take the beltway, I can take some other back road. That much control I have. But whether I reach the destination on time or not is no guarantee. There's no guarantee of success. There's a high probability of success. If I leave home on time, I can 90%, 95% of the time I'll reach the destination on time. High probability of success, but no guarantee, 100% guarantee of success. These are so many factors. What other people do in our lives, in the workplace, in the family environment. In a very nice, harmonious family, one person misbehaves, whole family will suffer. How can you control? That is why Sri Krishna says you have no control over the outcome of your work. But on that account, if you say I'm not going to do any work at all, that also will not work. You have to get up and do the work. If you do the work properly, there's very high chance, 99% chance that you will succeed. But there's a small chance that you may not succeed, in spite of your best effort, because failure can be due to some other factor. Before I leave this topic, I'll give one more example. Supposing you are a medical officer, you are a physician, you are treating a patient. A patient comes to you and he explains his problem, and you prescribe a blood test. You tell the patient to go to a Quest Diagnostics or LabCorp, give a prescription for this test, and the patient goes to the diagnostic laboratory, LabCorp or somewhere, and then the technician there takes the blood sample, phlebotomist takes your blood sample, the patient's blood sample, and the patient goes home and waits for the outcome. Normally what happens, the diagnostic laboratory sends the blood sample to the lab where it actually is done. The place where the blood is collected is not the same place where the test is done. Test is done in a central laboratory. Blood is collected in many different places. And all the blood samples are labeled and with the date of birth and name of the patient, mailed it to the lab, and lab technician does the lab report. He does not know who the doctor, who the patient is, and it is supervised by the pathologist in the lab, and the pathologist faxes the outcome of the result, the test result to the doctor. Doctor looks at the result and prescribes the medicine or treatment. That's the normal procedure. In this chain of events, how many things can go wrong? It actually happened to me. I went to a hospital, big hospital, for some problem, and they took my blood sample. The hospital has a lab, its own lab in the same building, so it won't take much. Half an hour, the result must come. 2 hours passed, no result come. And then after 2 hours, the doctor came and told me, sorry, you have to take your blood sample again. Then what happened to the sample you took 2 hours ago? They said there is some problem, labeling problem, we have to do this thing. So in this chain of events, how many things can go wrong? The person who draws the blood, they put the wrong label on this wine, on the blood vial sample. And the person who does the test may not know the his work properly. Maybe the first day on his job, or he may have had an argument with his spouse on the way to work, even that in good mood, or the equipment users may not be properly calibrated. How many possibilities, things going wrong? It happens all the time. Therefore, what the doctor say, I will not prescribe any test at all. Can he say like that one? Because there is no guarantee of things going right. You have to do the work and hope that things will be all right. But once in a while, something goes wrong, and we are without your control, we don't even know where the problem occurred. Therefore, the instruction Sri Krishna gives is, do your best and leave the rest. Remember this statement. Many years, some time ago, I gave a Sunday talk here at the Washington Center. The title of my talk was, do the best and leave the rest. That's the thought. That is, I was explaining this verse. There's always a degree of certain uncertainty when it comes to the result of our work. But on that account, we should not say will not work at all. It won't work and we have to work. That's why in the fourth part, the last part of this verse 47, Sri Krishna says, Mate sangostu akarmani. May you not take recourse to inaction. You have to be active. To do our part as well as I can. Then whatever result comes, we have to accept it with equanimity. Because if the failure comes not because I did not do my part properly. Failure comes because some other factor over which I had no control. I don't even know what caused the failure. Even if I know, I could not have controlled it. Somebody else's lack of efficiency or inability to work, or some other factor beyond my control affected the result of my work. Though I did my best, the satisfaction must come by knowing that I have done my best, and the failure is not due to anything on my part that I did not do properly. Failure happened because of some factor over which I have no control. So therefore, I'll do my best and accept the outcome calmly. There's no point in becoming very upset and yelling and screaming and becoming frustrated or depressed if failure comes. Failure is a part of life. In the game of life, you win some, you lose some. 99 times you win, one time, 1 or 2 times you fail. Therefore, we should be ready for accepting the outcome of the work after having done our best. There should be no shortcoming in my effort. I do my best. There, my responsibility stops. Result is not in my control. That is the message in verse number 47. 48 is a continuation of that. Therefore, what should I do? Since I cannot control the outcome of my work, what should I do? He says, don't be inactive. You have to do my work. Success or failure, you can't predict, you can't control. There's always this certain degree of unpredictability and uncontrollability of the outcome of work in any situation. Because I cannot predict or control what the outcome will be, I should not stay inactive. I should not remain inactive. I should do my best. Hope for the best. Verse number 48 contains the instruction. The instructions are very important. There are here 2 instructions are given. Very important. We should, whenever we do any work, we should keep this verse in mind. These 2 instructions in mind. Let us do 48. If you have question about 47, 48, please send me, call me or email, and I will be happy to explain. So, verse number 48. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Very important verse, 5-star verse. Please make a special note of this verse, 48. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Here 2 instructions are given. First one is Yogastha karmani kuru. Yoga means karma yoga here. Yoga means different things in different contexts. In this context, yoga means karma yoga. Karma yoga means the proper way to do the work, proper attitude with which work has to be done. We will understand that. He gives instructions. Details will come. First instruction is perform all your work with an attitude of yoga. Yogastha means assuming the position of yogi, staying as a yogi. Stha means to stay in a particular position, attitude. Yogastha means as a yogi, as a karma yogi would do, karmani kuru, perform all your actions. But I don't know what yogastha means. What does it mean to be yogastha? That is explained in the second part of the verse. First instruction is to be a yogi, sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. Dhananjaya means Arjuna's name. Giving up attachment. This is a very big topic in itself, attachment. How to give up. So we'll try to understand. First instruction is sangam tyaktva, giving up attachment. Tyaktva means giving up. Attachment to karma and karma phala, both. We'll see how to do that, how to practice detachment. We'll see that. I'll give examples. Second line. First instruction is practicing detachment, sangam tyaktva, without attachment. Second instruction is siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva. Siddhi means success. Asiddhi means absence of success or failure. Siddhya siddhyo, in success and failure, samo bhutva, remaining equanimous. When success comes, we should not too much exalt and start celebrating. Next moment, things will change. When failure comes, we should not become depressed or sad or angry or bitter. In both cases, whichever happens, success or failure, whichever happens, I should remain calm and accept the outcome calmly after having done my part to the best of my ability. That's the important part. Have I done my part best? To the best way? That's my question. If I have done yes, then success or failure, I'm not responsible. Other factors come into play. Besides what I put in. So, siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva, remaining equanimous in success and failure. And the last part is the conclusion part. What is yoga? Samatvam yoga uchyate. Samatva means this equanimity in success and failure. The topic of equanimity comes in many places in the second chapter. It came in an earlier verse. Where did it come? Verse number, recently it came. Verse number 38. 38. Second chapter, verse number 38. Equanimity came. If we go back to verse number 38 in second chapter, where Sri Krishna says, Sukha dukhe same kritva, labha alabhau same kritva, jaya ajayu same kritva, tato yuddha yujyasva, naivam papam avapsasi. First line is equanimity. In verse number 38, Sukha dukhe same kritva. Sukha, dukha. Sukha means happiness. Dukkha means unhappiness. Same kritva means treating equally. Some days we are happy, some days we are unhappy. Very happy, suddenly things change and become unhappy. Or in the opposite way also. Opposite can also happen. Supposing some lot of problems are there, suddenly things will change and all the problems are solved. Which happens when we have no control. Many factors beyond our control operate in our lives, and what we have to do is to do our part very well as we can. We are responsible for our part. Their responsibility is once I done my part very well, my task is over, my job is over. Result is not in my hands. I have to accept the result, whether it is up to my expectations or not, with equanimity, without becoming upset or angry or sad or depressed. Sukha same kritva, 238. Labha alabho same kritva. Labha means gain or profit. Alabha means loss. Whether I gain or lose, in business, sometimes you gain, sometimes you lose. There's no guarantee in sports also. When you play a team sport or even individual sport, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Which happens when you cannot control. You have to do your part very well. That's all you can do. Same sukha, jaya jayu, labha labho same kritva. Gain and loss. Jaya jayu same kritva. Jaya means success. Ajaya means opposite of success, failure. In success and failure, you remain equanimous. That verse number 38, like that many other verses will come in the later chapters. But here, going back to verse number 48, verse number 48, here. Samatvam yoga vachate. Samatva means ability to remain calm and equanimous without becoming too much upset if the result is not good, without becoming too much elated if the result is good. Sangam samabhutva, samatvam yoga vachate. This maintenance of equanimous frame of mind, equanimity of mind, is the essence of yoga. Yoga means what? In Karma Yoga context, yoga means equanimity of mind. Under all circumstances, failure may come, success may come, a combination of both will sometimes result is a mixture of combined, a mixture of good and bad, success and failure. You do some work and some part of it will succeed, some part of it will not succeed. Usually they're mixture, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Which happens when you have no way to predict or control. Therefore, what's the solution? Do the best. Our part must be done properly, conscientiously, diligently, with devotion, love and gratitude. Then I'll say, I have done my part. Rest is not in my hands. Whatever comes, I'll accept it. If failure comes, I know that I have done my best. Failure is not due to something that I did not do properly. Failure is due to some factor which I could not control, outside my control. Then I have nothing to do with it. I accept the outcome calmly. That is the instruction Sri Krishna gives us. Yogastha kuru karmani. As a yogi perform action, yoga means two points. One is sangam tyaktva. 2 points are given here. Both you have to follow. Giving up attachment to karma, karma phala. Second point is siddhyo samabhutva. Remaining equanimous, unperturbed in success and failure, in praise and blame, in loss and gain, in good and in bad. Always remaining calm, equanimous frame of mind. You can see this in the life of Holy Mother. So many problems came. Her own health problems were there, with no modern facilities for medical treatment or even good food or anything. Family members created trouble, and there was not enough resources, small place to live in, cramped quarters. All these problems came. She never complained anything. I was reading recently her biography. When she was young, she had malaria or some problem, and the spleen became very large. Splenomegaly. Spleen became very large, and it was uncomfortable. Those days there was no modern medical facilities were not there. Some Ayurvedic or homeopathic, some herbal medicine people used to give, and that was the medicine. So the spleen became very large and there is no treatment. Then the local people had a remedy for that one. The remedy, if you listen to that remedy, you will you will not like it. The remedy that they had in the local is to take the patient to a temple. There was a temple there near where she was living, near Jairambati, and the patient will go to the temple, and one village person will come, and he will take a burning piece of wood and brand that part of the stomach where spleen is. Burning piece of wood. That was the treatment, branding. And she went through that. Usually what happens when the patient goes, two people hold her legs, two people hold the patient's arms, so she will not move. And they'll put a piece of banana leaf on the area where the spleen is, and they'll take this burning piece of fire and then brand it. Can you imagine the amount of discomfort one feels like that? She went through the whole process very calmly, without complaining at all. And this book says, the biography says, spleen became normal size again. I don't know how the treatment works, but I'm not going to have the treatment. No, thanks you. So that why I give the example is, she is an example of equanimity. Never complained why this is happening to me. So many family people, members gave trouble. Never come. She did her part day and night, day and night. In spite of all this lack of facilities, lack of resources, and unhelpful environment, in spite of all this, she never gave up her spiritual practice. Every morning she would get up at 2:30 and meditate until daybreak, and she would do 100,000 japa every morning. She's an example of equanimity, samatva. If you want to see samatva in somebody's life, study Holy Mother's life. She's someone never complained about anything. So siddhyo samo bhutva, remaining equanimous in success and failure, not becoming too much elated if success comes, not become too much depressed or angry if failure comes. But after having done my part to the best of my ability, under the circumstances, limitations are there. There's hardly there is any place where ideal working conditions prevail. In all working situations, some problem will be there. Co-workers may not be the right people, weather may not be right, company policy may not be helpful. You want to do something, they will force you to do this way. I give another example. I have a medical officer friend, a doctor friend. He used to have a solo practice. And a solo practice means you can decide how much time you want to give to each patient, how many patients to take, what test to prescribe, and what treatment to prescribe. You have complete freedom, 100% freedom in treating the patient as a solo practice. But after some time, it became difficult, and he joined a group. In the group, there were 70 physicians were working, all different specialties. There, it was very difficult for it. Explained to me, the group has a policy. You can only prescribe these tests and not these tests. You have to see so many patients in 1 hour, and you cannot see less. That restrictions that the company, the group places, restricts the hand, ties the hand of the physician. Yes, full freedom in solo practice, but in group practice, the company decides how much work you do, how many patients you have to see, what test you can do, what medication you cannot prescribe. They do all the policy. You have no control. That is what happens in our life. We don't have complete control over many things in our work situation, family situation also. We don't have control. Therefore, what's the solution? Solution is to do two things. Do our best Yogastha kurus karmani. Our best means giving up attachment to karma, karma phala, and siddhya siddha samabhutva. After having done my best, I should remain calm, accept success, failure with equanimity. There's no other choice. Now, this next question is how to give up attachment. Sangam Tyaktva, he says. How to give up attachment. This long, very large topic. Attachment itself is a big topic. We can go on for hours, but I will briefly mention how to give up attachment to work and its fruits of work. Attachment, we become attached to everything in life. We become attached to people with whom we live and work. We become attached to the place where we live and work. We become attached to the possessions we have, our car, our money, our house. We become attached to them. We become attached to the people, my child, my grandchild, my house. Attachment comes to everything. This world is a very sticky place. Sri Ramakrishna gives the example of a room where it is very dark and all the walls are coated with a fine film of soot, black soot. No matter how careful you are when you enter the room, something or other will stick on you, something black soot will stick to your body at some place or other. World is like that. No matter how careful we are, there is a chance that we become attached to people, with attached to karma, the work we do, attached to the possessions, property we have, attached to the place where we live and work. Attachment is very common. How to give up attachment? Only in regard to work we will do now. Regard to other things we will discuss later. How to become free from attachment to work. First thing Sri Krishna gives, he gives many instructions throughout the Gita. First thing to give up attachment is, ideally we should say, I'm not the doer at all. That's very high level. We will not go there right now because we are not ready there yet. Simple way to give up attachment is, whenever we do some work, we have to offer our work to God as our offering. You already know that one. Verse number 30. No, that's next time. I'm sorry, next chapter, not in this chapter. When we do some work, how to become free from attachment to work? Mentally, only mentally we can offer something to God. Physically, He will not come and take our work. We should say, I'm doing it as an offering to you. I'm doing it. Yat Kanvarshi Edashnasi, chapter 9, verse 27. We'll come to that later. Whatever you do, offer it to me, Sri Krishna says. Why this offering has to be done? Does He need our work? No, He does not need our work. He is the Lord of the whole universe. What does He need? But still He says, whatever you do, offer it to me. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya. Offering all, dedicating all actions to me. He says in chapter 3, verse number 30. We'll go to that later. Right now, whenever we do some work, we should mentally, chetasa, mentally we should say, oh Lord, I'm doing this work as an offering to you. Not that He needs our work, not to fulfill His need, but for me to become free from attachment to that work. When I give something to somebody, then I'm detached. I don't have any ownership, control over that. It becomes that person's property. That way I'm detached from work. If I do all the work I do, if I mentally offer to God, then I'm free from that obligation, free from that result of the work. The result will not bother me because work itself I have given to God. That is one way to become free from attachment. Second way to become free from attachment to work is to think of oneself as an instrument and think of God as the doer. He is the doer and I am only the instrument. He makes me do what I do. There's a very nice Bengali song. Shukladi can sing that very well. In your Sunday group nowadays, we are not meeting to various problems. This song is very well known. Sri Ramakrishna was fond of this song. The poet says, "O Divine Mother, everything happens by your will. Sakali tumari ichha. Ichha mohi taratami. You are self-willed, you make your will happen. Samar karma tame korama. You do your work. Loke bole koriyami. People erroneously think I'm the doer. She does her work, and I think I'm the doer. I'm only the instrument." Sri Krishna says exactly same thing in the Gita, 11th chapter, verse number 33. Sri Krishna says to Arjuna, do you think you are the doer? Arjuna was asking the question, how can I kill Karna, Duryodhana, and all people, my own people, how can I kill? Was asking. Sri Krishna asked the question, You think you are the killer? Forget about it. If you think you are the doer, you are not the doer. Then who is the doer? Somebody has to do. Sri Krishna says, I am the doer. Lord himself says, I am the doer. You are only an instrument. Clearly, Sri Krishna says in chapter 11, verse 33, you are only an instrument in my hands. Go through the motions of doing the work. I am doing the work. He says, Maya vete nihataha purvameva nimitta matram bhava savya swachin. Maya eva, by me alone, ete sarve, Bhishma Dronadayaha, Bhishma Dronakar, everybody, Duryodhana, everybody, purvameva nihataha, already I have been killed. It's done deal, it's done. You think you are going to kill all these people? You think so? No. Nimitta matram bhava, just be the instrument in my hands. You are not the doer. That instruction applies to us. You are only the instruments. Lord God is the doer. If you take that attitude, then we are not the doers. Detachment will come. Doing as an offering to God, doing as an instrument in the hands of God, those are the ways in which to practice detachment from karma. Same thing about karma phala. Karma phala is to be offered to God. I'm doing this work, Sri Krishna Arpanamastu, or whatever your chosen idea is. Please accept this as my humble offering. Not that he needs our work. I'm offering it because I don't want to be the owner of it. I want to become detached from this work. I've done my part, and rest is up to you. That should be our attitude. Siddhya siddhyo sama bhutva sangam tyaktva, two instructions. Samatvam yoga vichyate. Essence of karma yoga is equanimity. Samatvam means equanimity in success and failure. This will come in the next 5 verses, 48, next 4 verses. This is the topic of equanimity. We'll discuss that when we meet next time. It's almost time now, and we will stop here, which was number 48. Next time we'll continue with 49 onwards. And if you have questions now, you can ask me, or I can say the closing prayer, or you can ask me then, or you can send me email or call me if you have questions. So closing prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may all be happy, may all be free from afflictions, may all realize what is noble and auspicious. May no one be subject to misery. Om, peace. May there be peace and joy in our hearts. May there be peace and harmony amongst all beings. May there be peace everywhere in nature. Hari Om Tatsat Sarvam Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Thank you all and stay well and stay in touch until we meet next.